Welcome back to the Patient Magnet Podcast. My name is Jared Rohr, and I am so grateful to be joined by literally somebody who has changed my entire life, who is one of the very first believers in me, in my business, has teed me up more than anybody that I know, and I am unendingly grateful for. I have got Dr. Tiffany Hall here, who is an expert in all things business within aesthetics, who helped form Lead AR and helped form what we see today as Aesthetic Record, and helped push Aesthetic Next to where it is today. And I am so grateful to have you here on the podcast and get to chat. And honestly, it's just an excuse for me to get to pick your brain so that I can grow. So thanks for being here, Tiff.
Well, thanks for having me. And now that you've gone viral, I'm like in the presence of a celebrity, so I can't wait either.
Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome for being in the presence of my whole one viral video, my second, technically two viral videos. So yeah, get in line. Well, today we're going to be chatting about kind of workplace culture, hiring, firing. How do we keep employees? What's a healthy retention rate? What should it look like within a clinic? And I know that you've got lots and lots of experience there. Obviously, you've been in the industry for how many years?
This is
20?
Do I look that old, Jared?
You look like you've been working here since you were 10.
This is going into year 11.
Year 11 in the industry.
Yes. Just a baby. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She started off working with Galderma and helped build a lot of the GAIN program that we see today. And so Tiffany's been very passionate about education for her whole career. Now, what we're going to talk about with hiring, firing, and all of that, when you're looking at clinics, because you get to see this from a super high level, what are some commonalities that you see when it comes to just maybe let's talk specifically just about employees, the topic of employees. What are some commonalities that you see that clinics struggle with?
I think there's really two completely opposite problems. On one end, it's the person who is like, I don't need to hire somebody else. I'll just do all the work myself. If I can cover it, there's no need to pay somebody to do it. I'll be the injector. I'll be the HR person. I'll be the accountant. I'll be all the things because I want to hold on to that revenue and hold on to that profit until I just absolutely have to do it. Not knowing that they could maximize that revenue, maybe 10 to 20x, they could just hire some help. So that's kind of one bookend. The other bookend is they hire in desperation. So they've waited too long. And now they're over capacity. They don't have enough bodies in the room to take care of the patients. And so they're so desperate that a person comes in with a heartbeat, a little bit of skill, maybe a decent enough attitude, maybe not alignment with core values, but my gosh, we've got to fill this spot right now. And so they hire kind of haphazardly just to fill the spot. So I think you either are overstaffing with the wrong person or you don't have enough staff and you are completely drowning because you're doing too many jobs.
Now, that person who is understaffed, so that person typically says, if it's going to be, then it's up to me. I'm not hiring anybody, blah, 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 blah. What percentage of that is them just being scared? They can't handle the risk of bringing on somebody and paying all that money for an employee. What percentage of that is actual what percentage of it's actual ego of them saying like, no, I'm not, I could do all this stuff. And what percentage of it is, I'm honestly scared. I don't know what would happen if I hired somebody.
I'm going to completely riff on this because I don't have exact percentages, but I think about 60 to 70% of people are like scared to death that if they put the cash outlay for somebody to come in, like the compensation, and if things don't go well, it's the oh shit moment of like, what am I going to do now? I've now hired this person. So now I have their mortgage on my conscience as well as my mortgage and the practice payments, et cetera. So I think about 60 to 70% are people who are genuinely afraid of the money. I think the other part, maybe 25%, is if I have to train someone and onboard, it's going to slow me down even more. And I'm already so far behind to think about the true process of onboarding is like, I can't do it. There's just no way I can take that on right now. So I think it's like another maybe 20%. I think that last percent is a little bit of just complete delusion that they can do it all, that this is going to be my thing. I'm in control. I don't want to dilute my ability to do what I want to do here and own and kind of own everything. I think about 10% is truly that. Now it could mask itself as that in other ways, but I think about 10% is truly like I don't know if it's arrogance, it's probably not the right word to use, but this idea that no one is as good as me. And if I let go of anything, it's all going to go to hell in a handbasket. And a lot of that's about not having clarity in roles, clarity in KPIs. I mean, there's so many ways to get around that, but I think it's probably majority fear. The other part's just I'm overworked and can't onboard. And then lastly, it's just like, no one's as good as me.
Yeah. And now to that person, I would just say the person says, oh my gosh, I can't afford to do it. I can't afford time-wise. I can't afford money-wise. I can't afford stress-wise to hire somebody else. I would say you can't afford not to. Like your business is not going to grow if you don't take the chance to bet on yourself. Because I have this, Alex Hormozi you're familiar
Oh, yes.
with Alex. With Alex, Alex Ramosi has this like it's like tattooed. He has like a tramp stamp of this. I think. I'm just kidding, Alex. If you're watching, in fact, you know what? We'll clip this. Alex Ramosi has a tramp stamp that says.
Alex, if you're watching, thank you.
Alex Ramosi has a tramp stamp that says "Grow or Die." And he plasters this all over his business, grow or die, because his thesis, and I agree with this, you see it in biology, if you're not growing, you're dying. And when maintenance is a myth, is what he says. Like just trying to maintain is a myth. But typically what will happen with all these businesses is they'll hit this peak and that peak will get really stressful and they will need to hire. And then they shy away from it and they make some excuse. They say, oh, no, I don't want to deal with the onboarding. It's like, oh, okay. And then the revenue goes back down, 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 down. And then they work back up and then they go back down. Then they work back up. It's a mess. Just push through. Just push through and be brave. That's what I say.
Well, and if you wait till you're at that peak, it's too late. When you're about 65%
Right.
of that peak, you better start hiring. Like, if you're a provider looking at a schedule, if you're 60 to 70% optimized in your calendar, it's time. Like it might even be beyond time because it's going to take at least 90 days to onboard someone to your culture, your values, just overall processes of the practice. And then ideally, if they don't have skills yet, that might be a 6-month time period. So if you wait until you need a person, you've waited far, far, far too long. It's too late now that you are in desperation mode. That's when you start to kind of curb things. Like you don't talk about the culture enough. You don't do enough core value training. You don't do enough process training. You forget about SOPs. It's like just brute forcing it through. And when you look back on that, it's like if we had just spent a little bit more time really getting the person acclimated to our culture and how we do things here, maybe they would have stayed. But because they felt really rushed and kind of out of sorts because we were in such a hurry to get them onboarded, we missed really key steps. And I think at that point, it's too late. It's really hard to kind of walk back a bad onboarding process because that new hire has that impression in their mind forever. And those are like really imprinted experiences for them that it's really hard to say to somebody, we didn't do a good job in the beginning, but trust us, we'll do better now. It's kind of like a bad marriage that starts out, you got to start out on the right foot.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yes, I agree. But I also think you just got to do the volume of like what I'll tell any young business, at least this happened with me plenty of times. Maybe I'm just a dingus, which is probably true. But I've had to build our business multiple times where it's like that first person I just had to hire and the onboarding process sucked. Our system sucked. Like we did not have any of it together, but I know that I needed the help, and that employee years and years ago that I first hired to be like an account manager with us, like churned because I don't think I was in a place to keep the person. I also don't think the person was a good fit. But then since then we hired more and then we rebuilt the systems and then we hired more and rebuilt the systems. It's like every 6 months you rebuild, the way that you run your business. And if we're afraid of it, we wanted to get perfect that first time. And I don't know. I wasn't blessed to get it perfect the first time.
Well, now you're getting into more of a thesis conversation. So we are a startup here. That is like a hiring thesis. So if you are that person, and I agree with you, we've hired, since I've been here in 7 years, hundreds of people. We have done it terribly wrong many times. But our thesis here is that you have to be a startup-minded individual who has high learning agility, high adaptability. Yes. If you have to have a very specific structured day every day, you will never survive here. So if I hire someone who needs that, who needs me to pour into them constantly to micromanage their day, to have everything scheduled out and predictable, if I hire that person, that's on me because I know that we're not that culture. We're not that. That's not how we operate here. And so our onboarding process is fluid, much like our day-to-day is fluid. Now we've done a much better job to structure it over the years. To your point, in the beginning, it was like, you're here, grab a mop and a bucket, let's go get this thing done. It wasn't quite so perfect. But as you scale your team, and now I have, I've got 13 leaders who manage their own teams, their own departments, their own processes. Now they have the capacity in their time to actually build out an onboarding process for their team. I doing it alone could never have done that. Like I tried, failed miserably. I hate onboarding. Personally, I hate to do it myself because I'm just not good at it. I need to get things done too much. But now that I have a team that I can delegate that to, they've all looked at their own areas and said, okay, let's focus on, once they come out of true onboarding, we have a true like L&D specialist here. Once they come out of that L&D specialist care, that first or second week, and they go to the team, they have a very specific kind of structured modules, checklist, testing out of things. But that took a lot of years to get there. But those first 20 hires, even the first, probably the first 15, 20, even 30 hires were all very startup minded. And their idea was, we see a job that needs done, we're going to go do it. We have a hole that needs plugged, we'll go plug it. Now, that does not make for good business long term. I will tell you, that's not the way to operate a business long term. You have to have clarity in your roles. But when you're first starting out, you need a jack of all trades, a master of all as well, just to get the business off the ground.
Yeah. I think, and clinics too. So, you're a solo injector and you're considering hiring your first MA or your front desk or an office manager. Um, they should have that conversation with the person they're hiring. It should not be this, you're coming into this beautiful business. It should be, at least I still have that with all of our employees. I tell this to them regularly. I just did a lecture over at Social Practice, our friend Mary Robb that we love. I did a lecture at Social Practice this last Tuesday and was talking to them because they're in this phase of growth right now, which is awesome. But, I told them, I was like, look, like you guys are a beautiful big business, but you are still a startup. You're going to feel that compression of pressure where it's like, you're going to feel the compression of pressure where management is selling all of these new accounts and you're like, I don't know if I can handle it. I don't know if I can handle it, but they have to do it in order to hit the next phase of growth where then now they hire all these other people. They don't have the money to hire those people unless you let them, you know, give you the pressure. And if you can just deal with the fact that it's like, that management's not mad at you for that pressure. Like I tell our team where I'm like, look, if we're in that season of pressure, we might churn a client or two. Like we might lose somebody. And it's because our systems will start to realize that our systems fail us at that size. I don't want to lose them, but giving them the freedom to say, look, like we're going to do the best we can and just know that you're in that startup phase. So when you feel that pressure, just know we have to lean in a little bit heavier. And then I promise I'm coming in to take care of you. I'm hiring more people. I'm getting more support. I'm building stronger systems, but we just got to deal with the pressure. And I think a clinic should have that conversation, something like that with their team as they bring them on.
And I think in the hiring process, I like to scare them to death. I want to talk you out of it. Like I want to make sure that you
Yeah.
know the reality of the situation so that when you get here, it's not like you sold me, cupcakes and rainbows, and now this is like a war zone. So I go
Mm,
through we do a three-step interview process here they are, but I go through the core values, like what do I expect from the team? What do we hold dear? And like if you can't align to these core values and this is not how you operate, you might be a phenomenal candidate, but this is not the place for you because your attitude and how you approach the job is equally as important to the skill. I can teach anyone how to do anything. I mean, being able to do the skill is if you have high learning agility is pretty simple, you know this. But
yeah.
having the right attitude and the right cultural fit and the right way to think about the job and the vision and where we're going, that is a very specific, like almost innate thing that you have to have. And I think, to your point, if you can cast a vision for your team and you can make sure that they understand that there is a plan in place, although it may seem like we're going down a lot of trails and we're, we're jumping over
Yeah.
boulders and bridges and things are blowing up, but there is a plan, there's a vision that right now it feels like it's a war zone, but we have a plan to get out of this and we have a plan for what the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years looks like, that there is some structure to it. You're not just kind of every day walking and trying to survive. I think
Mm,
that gives a lot of trust to the organization, but I also think it's about who you hire. We do the thing here, DISC, if you guys have heard of DISC. And
yeah.
my team is very heavy S. I'm not a big feeler. I don't feel a lot. I don't have like a lot of like woo woo stuff, but I've got a very high S team who all have a lot of feelings, big feelings. And so managing big feelings takes a lot out of me personally. And so there's days that I just can't do that. But I have people on the team who are
Yeah.
great at managing feelings and they can go cater to that person or those people who have those needs. We also have like a lot of eyes who are very like extroverted and they're very excited and happy. And to keep them focused is sometimes hard. So it's also about
Yeah.
having like, let's pour into your social nature, but also keep you focused on the task ahead. Or I'm a
Hmm.
high D. I want to just like drive through, go bulldoze everything.
Mm,
And so it's also
yeah.
looking at your team saying, what does your team need? What gap do you have? If you have a lot of people on your team who are all bulldozers, you need a person who's a peacekeeper. You need a person who can like help to soften that blow and can help communicate amongst the raging alphas to make sure that things get kind of copacetically communicated. But you also need a feeler who can help with patients who have a bad day, who are upset, who have a
Mm,
concern. You've got to balance out the whole weight of everything. And if you have too much of a good thing, it's not a good thing, right? If they all look just like you, if you're the manager and you hire just like you're going to be screwed long term because you've got to have a good balance. So we love to look at things like just personality traits, behavioral traits to see like where are we missing something and then even up the score.
So maybe what would you say, Tiffany, to people who are kind of like you? They're the driver. I would say that I would bet that the majority, more people that are in medicine have a little bit more of that analytical drive mindset than maybe the emotional side. For you, what are things that you've learned as a manager on, okay, how do I work with somebody who's one of those high S's? How do I build that? Obviously in your case, maybe you're hiring people to help, but maybe somebody doesn't have that luxury. What are the ways that you've learned how to have empathy while still bringing somebody up to another level?
That's a great question. And I'm a disassociative empath, so I go home and think about it and I'm guilty all night long, but I just don't do it in front of you. So it's like it's a very hard thing to kind of manage. So I need people who can, in that moment, have the empathy that they need. But I think the biggest way for me to do it early on, when we had like 3 employees, 5 employees, was what are your rules of engagement? So, Jared, what do how do you want to be talked to? How do you want to be addressed? How do you want your workday to go? Like, what are the things that are important to you? And almost like building an inventory for your employees. What makes them happy? What makes them sad? When are they at their best? Is it morning? Is it afternoon? When should you have the meetings? Are they great fresh in the morning? Have the hard meetings dense. They can really get through the mental gymnastics in the morning. But in the afternoon, they're
Right.
great with like fun and excitement. Have more like client facing things that are exciting in the afternoon. So I think a lot of it's like roles of engagement, but also
Okay.
how do they want to be coached? Is it like I can do one on one with you? I can actually have like a critical conversation with you. Can I coach you in the moment? Does it need to be like some big thing to build up to? Is it the Oreo method, which I hate, but that's a different conversation
Oh yeah, the
entirely.
little sandwich. Yeah,
Oh, I'm
sandwich.
like,
A
don't say,
compliment sandwich.
yeah, like
Yeah.
you're
Uh-huh.
great, but I'm like, well, forget that.
Uh-huh.
But I think part of it is like, what are those rules of engagement? And then also letting your employees know how you operate. Like if my door's open, you can come in. If it's
Mm,
closed, I'm
yeah.
probably busy. How do I want to be talked to on, is it Slack? Is it email? Do I want to have a
Hmm.
phone call? Do you need to interrupt me, for a meeting? I like to know before a meeting, what is our content? What's it about?
Yeah.
Who's it with? Like, I think those ground rules can help you with so much. I think it's like the military, right? Before you engage in battle, you have a whole battle plan. Like, you know what you're going to do, who
Yeah.
you're going to do it with, what weapons you're going to bring. It's a very
Hmm.
similar thing. So if you're not naturally that way, you're not naturally a person who can be empathetic or who can like sort of assimilate to the situation, set the ground rules first.
Mm.
But the other part
Outline
of
it.
that is knowing what your employees actually value. We are so misconstrued or misunderstood
That's
about
good.
money that all the things we want are just money, 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 compensation. And if you do the math, I just had this discussion last week. If you give somebody a $5,000 raise, it's really nothing. By the end of the day, per month, per paycheck, it's like
Couple hundred
what, like,
bucks.
yeah, a couple $100 a month. That is not motivating for me. If I'm at a certain income level, that's not going to make me go over the top. But you give me additional opportunities to learn, more CME
Mm.
education. You give me a chance to take an additional day of PTO, or I get to have, a chance to sit in at big meetings with, external vendors or even a leadership huddle. Like, what are the things that are important to me that I can earn that are not just money? So at the end of the day,
Yeah.
for the practice, you're spending money on the actual salary plus all the taxes plus all the benefits. And if you're not going to get some significant change in behavior because of that, or some loyalty concern, or some retention thing from that, is it really worth the investment? Maybe CMEs are better. Go to a conference together. Put them through a certification program instead. Like, what are the things that really matter to your employee? Because throwing money at the
Mm.
problem, as we all know, does not solve the problem, and we end up being cash poor. And then our employees are also not happy either. So what was the point of all that? So I
Right.
think it's just in the beginning, learn what you can about your employees and what they need from you, and also tell them and be vulnerable with them what they need to ask for from you and what you can give them. I think it's really helpful to get that, kind of squared away early on.
Yeah, I think it is critical with employees in the very beginning, when you first hire them, to identify what success actually looks like for them. So, when you first hire an employee, it should not. You need to find out what makes them tick. What is it that motivates them? Is it progression in career? Is it creating a lifestyle job where it's like, okay, great, I have a really good flow at work. I have good pay, good pay and good time off so that I can go enjoy time with my family. Like, balance is really important to me, or whatever it is. Like, identify what those success points are for them so that those can be the things that you push for them moving forward. So that if the person wants, if you want higher performance or want to encourage them to push further, you can motivate them with those things.
And I think the other part in a clinic that's so hard for practices, because it's just not the way it's set up, is this idea that if they come in as a leader, they want to be a leader. Like, if you hire me, I'm going to bulldoze my way to the top no matter what I do. I need to be in charge of stuff.
Right.
I need to make sure that things are going correctly. Like, I'm never going to be an hourly independent contributor. It's just not how I operate. Like, I just can't, I'll never be happy in that job. I'm going to come in wanting to be in charge of something, people, processes, whatever it is. If a person comes into your practice with that kind of mentality, they're not going to be happy just being a provider forever. They're not going to be happy
Hmm.
with the same job every day, 9 to 5, injecting, doing lasers, whatever. They want to be a clinical leader. They want to be a practice leader. They want to have a location that they're managing on their own. They want to be able to be more involved in, directing training and leadership development and things for the practice. So don't get mad when they leave if you didn't give them the path to actually achieve what they want to achieve. Because if they can't
Correct.
get to that level, they're going to go build their own practice because they want to be in charge of something. They want to lead something. And so if you can't give them that with stepstones towards some kind of other, whether that's, let's see, to practice in another part of town or new location, or even just to build out a training program or training facility, give them those things that make them feel like they're part of the leadership operation of your organization. And they'll stay more often than not if they have nothing else to really achieve or to strive for. You need a talent map or talent plan so that they don't come in and just say, I'm going to be doing the same thing as a provider for the rest of my life every day. I might get a raise, more commission, more bonus, whatever, but I'm not going to have any sort of elevated title or elevated responsibility because this is all
Yeah.
that there is for me. And so if you don't have that structure in place already with like the leadership structure or leadership dynamic at the top, build that out first before you bring in a truly high performer, because they're not going to be happy in that same role forever.
I completely agree. Now, so okay, maybe pivoting a little bit, kind of going back to like your desperate energy that you talked about earlier about when to hire, because I think personally, I think that desperate energy comes when you knew you should probably start considering hires 5 months ago, but we're too scared, we're too fearful, too whatever. What are some of those what are some of those triggers for clinics to look for when it's like, oh, probably time to make a hire here?
I think the hardest one is that practice manager. And I think in the
Yeah.
beginning, if you're the only injector, the only person making money for the practice, if you're spending even 30% of your time doing administrative BS, answering phones, responding to clients, doing follow ups, building out email campaigns, all these things that you're doing as a practice manager slash owner slash injector, it's time to get somebody else in. And I would say in that case, it's got
Yes.
to be a hybrid person who can do a little bit of marketing, can be the front desk and also the practice manager. They're kind of fractionally sitting in a few different roles. But when you're first starting out, if you're spending the majority of your revenue generating time doing administrative things and managerial things,
Mhm.
you can't make money. So that practice manager is one of the most important things you'll ever hire. That's the first hire for me if I'm a practice owner, is getting somebody in here who
Mhm.
can manage the business and also with bookkeeping and just paying bills and taxes, etc. You need a
Yeah.
person you can hand off things to in your mind so you can go actually be the injector, the provider, the money maker of the practice.
Yeah. Okay. So wait, hold on. Pause because this is where I slightly disagree and would love to hear
Oh,
your thoughts.
okay.
I know. I was like, as second you said that, I'm like, interesting. Let me give you my take and you tell me, and tell me what you think. Because I do agree that an admin should be the very first hire. I think that the rate limiting step for clinics is what happens is the provider, in order to grow, you got to get new patients. In order to grow, you got to have new butts in seats on the schedule. And the thing that stops those new butts from getting in seats and on the schedule is a front desk staff or somebody to call the leads back and get them scheduled. It's somebody to get the people on the freaking schedule. And what I always tell clinics is you can have that first admin do some practice management stuff. But in my opinion, the rate limiting step is that you're so stuck in the rooms that you can't call the leads back. So you can't get people on the schedule. So you're in this constant flux. So I always say very first hire, I like hiring from the bottom up. Like very first job is like make it front desk. Their job is appointment setting. Get them to fill your books and then hire like maybe a practice manager after that. But that front desk staff's primary job is fill the schedule and do some of the little admin work. But I would love to hear your take on that because I think yes, but I also think if they just heavily prioritize like appointment setting as that very first job, it'll help them scale faster. What do you think?
Well, I agree because I think in the beginning you can't afford a real practice manager, right? In the beginning, you can't
No.
afford to pay somebody who's a true, legitimate manager of a business. So you're going to hire that hybrid person who's going to be doing front desk work. Like they're kind of a true like admin, right, for the practice. Not really a practice manager in the way that we think about building a giant business, but they're doing
Yeah.
leads, front desk. They're also, the city comes in with a permit. They're trying to figure out, your schedule when we have a double booking or, patient calls in, et cetera. I think in that beginning step or that first kind of, first year, that practice quote unquote manager is really just the other person in the practice who's not you and not in a room stuck that can do
Okay.
everything else. And then at that
Yeah.
point, once you start to accumulate more revenue and you can actually offload the task and you can start to bring in a provider to do more and more and more, you can hire a legitimate, practice manager with a business degree and a business mind or, understands P&L, understands KPIs. But that first hire that you make to get a true business minded person in that practice, you probably can't afford them at that moment. You just need to get,
Rare.
to your point, butts and seats, but also to optimize the schedule, get the right butts in the right seats, help with lead
Hmm.
follow up, help with follow up, nurturing after they've actually come in to get them back into practice. I agree with
Hmm.
you. It's a kind of a hybrid role. Really, it's just a person you're going to delegate all the things that you can't do because you're in a room to get it done and make the practice happen.
Yeah, that's fair. Now, at what stage? So first hire is that hybrid-ish person, and what's the trigger to be like, okay, we need? Is the trigger basically like the second I can pay enough, or is the trigger a certain amount of pressure that they're feeling? Is it? I had always said the cue for that is when your booking rate starts dropping. So if you're not using a software like Lead AR and you're listening, please go on Lead AR's website right now and sign up. You need a CRM because if this is my opinion, you let me know. I always say you make that first hire when your booking rate drops below 30% because you're too busy to get back to those leads. So if your booking rate drops below 30%, boom, hire that front desk person / admin, make them primarily responsible for getting the booking rate back up to 50% or more so you can get that massive profit margin to whether hire new people or maybe invest into like a legit business admin, like a manager that's doing the whole thing, and then you keep the front desk. Are there other triggers or data triggers that you tell people to look for that you care about where it's like, hey, it's time?
this is probably more of a gut instinct, but if you're willing to pay money for ads and for marketing, it's time for a front desk slash admin person. Because as you and I
Hmm.
both know, getting leads in is the easy part. Like if you've got a pretty decent person to help you with lead, ad placement and helping with like the meta ad manager, things like that, you can get leads you can at least get leads into some kind of a funnel. It's
Yeah.
the transition from the funnel from like they're just interested, they're kind of fascinated with your business to all the way into booking and conversion. If you're willing to
Hmm.
pay for that and you have no plan to actually execute and convert, you've
Yeah.
just wasted money. A better spin is to put a
Mm.
real human in the mix here and say, let's just do some contact forms, some free Instagram, advertising, some word of mouth referrals, etc., and convert what we can convert before we start putting in like Google ad money. I think Google ads, if you're not well disciplined on a whole lead pipeline, there's no reason to spend money on ads yet because you just can't
No,
convert what you get. So my whole
absolutely.
thought is if I need leads, I'm going to start really actively marketing my practice. It's time to hire a person to manage the lead funnel for me and to manage the people coming
Mm.
in that are thinking about the practice. And I think about this all the time. Can you get a decent hire for an hourly rate, not a salary job, but like a fractional? You're going to work 20 hours a week to start. Can we stair step
Mhm.
somebody in from they're going to work fractionally all the way up to now they're full time? So I think there's like I don't know if the trigger is a true like financial trigger more than it is. I know that we can grow. I see the capacity that we have to grow. I think we have a great market that we can really saturate and penetrate, but I can't manage the lead funnel. It's time to hire somebody to get
Mhm.
in the practice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So once we start really seeing all the other pieces, once we start seeing the balls drop, get that person in as fast as possible because then what happens, at least from the business owner side, from the founder side, that's when I start feeling the pressure of like, oh my gosh, I'm disappointing my clients. Oh my gosh, I'm not getting back to so and so, and they're pissed at me, and they're sending me an email saying, oh my gosh, I don't even want to come in anymore because you haven't responded to my one email asking about my appointment. And it's like I've got 50 other things I can't, like as a founder, those things start piling up, and that pressure typically makes people want to recluse. They want to back off, and they don't want that. They don't want to deal with that. Instead, lean in and hire somebody, deal with some more pressure so that they can take that off your plate.
And there's no badge of honor for being a martyr. Like if you suffer
Mm.
for your practice and you're working 22 hours a day, as I say this, I'm laughing at myself for saying this because this is me to a T.
Because you do it.
But if you're willing to suffer in the trenches for your practice 20 hours a day and you're miserable and your home life starts to suffer and you just feel so exhausted you can't function, you cannot make a good decision. Your strategic vision is done. You're toast. Your ability to make a decision that's helpful for the practice is toast. You're so depleted and so just over it that everything seems like a massive task and things that should be a simple yes become this like overwhelming burden for you as a practice owner. When you're at that point, it's too late. Like you've got to be fresh. When you have a startup, you've got to be thinking about that business all the time, but you got to make great decisions that are more often right than wrong. And if you are so depleted and your cup is so empty that you can't function and think about that anymore because you're just over it, the idea of being passionate about what you're doing is gone. You're just now
Yeah.
surviving and you didn't do this to survive. You did this to thrive. And so I think if that's kind of for me the break point as well is like when I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I'm so tired that I just can't function. I've got to have help. At that point, like that's your first indication that you've got to have help. Like you've got to have somebody to help
Yeah.
you. And I don't mean like Jane's brothers, aunts, cousin, sister that you're going to hire part time for $8 an hour. I don't mean that. I mean like
Right.
legitimate help that you can actually train, you can onboard, you can have KPIs, you can have metrics you can depend on.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're that depleted and that tired, you are hurting your business far more than you ever would if you just pay a little bit extra money to get somebody in
Mm-hmm.
there and have to work a little bit harder to make sure the salary's covered. Like you can
That,
get that salary covered if you have a fresh mind and fresh body to go do that.
that is so good. Well, you don't win by volume of work. You
Right.
win by volume of effective work, and I think we have this hustle culture that says like grind, 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 work for 20 hours a day. Just like you're saying, like we have this hustle culture that says like grind, and people think just by sitting, like I did a whole YouTube video on this the other day and I introed it sitting in this chair because in the beginning of my business, I would work a 20-hour day. I would work an 18-hour day and I would brag about it. But what I didn't say is that 4 of those hours, even 5 of those hours, were me stressing about one thing I had to do and sitting in that chair and doom scrolling on social media instead when I should have just been sleeping. So it was like me at like 12 a.m., like stressing about something I had to do. And I'd be like, oh, let me just go. And then I'd doom scroll on social for like hours and trying to convince myself to send one email. And it was not volume of work. I worked this long, I set aside this much time, but it was volume of actual effective work that helped us grow. And so I would say for anybody that is struggling with that, where maybe they're putting in so many hours, they don't know what to do. They're going to bed so tired every night. And it's like, just audit the work that make sure that the work that you're doing is effective. You don't win exactly what you said. You don't win a badge for martyrdom. I think that's such a great a great takeaway for them there.
And there are days that you're going to work more. Like if you're over capacity in your schedule, you might have to do a Saturday and Sunday. Like I'm not saying you'll never have to do that. I'm just saying it can't be your normal routine. You can't go ahead and in your mind say, I'm going to work Monday through Sunday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. every night forever. Because you look up and say, I've got a great business, but I have no husband, no kids, no friends, no family, no nothing. I've lost my church. I've lost my, my social groups. I'm basically a slave to this business, which is growing, but at what cost? And at some point, to make money and have no one to share it with is also not very fun. So I think you've got to, in your mind, kind of understand in your own core value system what's important to you and try to find the balance as best you can. And there is no balance. I get that. I'm a working mother. I get that. But there is some place where you feel at least at peace with your decision-making process that you can at least function and have some kind of a life. I think you've got to get there because long-term, that adrenal fatigue that you get, this I'm sure as well as anybody, it weighs on a person. And you just at some point, diminishing returns, right? You hurt the business more than you help it.
Yeah. I think you're touching on something a handful of times that I think is probably worth calling out too, is your own personal core value system. I think we probably hear about this a lot, and it's something I really didn't dig in deep into until very recently for myself of like, what matters to me, and when I'm doing what things do I feel fulfilled? Because what I was finding is I had a lot of dissonance where I was feeling friction. And after I named it, I realized, oh my gosh, I just have things that are way out of my values, and I'm stuck in those things. And so getting out of that and realigning with my own values is huge. Because I know you guys have great core values over at Aesthetic Record, but you have your own. I'm assuming you have your own Dr. Tiffany Hall core values that you kind of like try to align yourself with.
I do. And I think part of it is it's sometimes in opposition of what you say versus what you actually want. So, for instance, a lot of things have to come through me, right? Decision-making processes, a lot of it has to come through me for final sign-off. Then there are days I'm like, oh my God, if one person asks me a question or asks me for approval or asks me for this thing, I'm going to literally jump out of a window. But I've designed that system, but now I resent that system because I want to make sure I have, I want to make sure that at the end of the day, if things go wrong, it's on my head, right? My shoulders. I'm the one who falls on the sword, not my team. So I want to be the one that says the final yes if it's a risky conversation or risky decision. But I'm also upset some days because I'm doing that all day long and I can't get any actual work done. So it's like I've designed systems to protect people, but now I'm not protecting myself. And so it's like you've got to figure out where that like delicate balance is of doing the things that you have to do for the business, but also making sure that they don't burn you out and make you crazy. Because if they do, to your point about core values, like it doesn't align with who you are, and then it starts to feel like it's like dissociative for you. It feels like you're in the wrong place. Yeah. It's like that weird icky feeling in your body where you don't feel like you belong somewhere. And I hate that feeling. I want to come here every day feeling like I'm so happy to be here. I belong here. I'm doing good things. And when that leaves you and you resent coming to work and you resent the work that you have to do when you get there, it's not a great place to be. And it will immediately impact your ability to have quality work.
Yeah, I think your values are who you are in the pursuit of your purpose. Yep. You know what I mean? It's like when you're living in your values, it's when you're doing the things that align with what you believe your purpose is. And when you're out of those values, you feel purposeless and you feel used and you feel, in your case, in that example's case, it's like, oh my gosh, everyone's just taking my time. And in your head, you're thinking, I wish I could do this. I wish I could have done this. I wish I could have done this. And it is exactly what you said, dissociative. And it feels like you're not in control of your life anymore, and you don't have control, which is miserable.
And I think as you look at as an employer, a part of this is also how you treat your employees. Like there's this thing many years ago called Strengths Finder, not to get woo-woo here, but there's a version 1,
I love
version 2.
Strengths Finder.
There are things that I'm just inherently not good at, like social media. I can do it. I can do all the graphics, but I hate doing it, Jared. I freaking hate doing it. My personal social media, it reflects this. I just don't like it because at the end of the day, it's 7:00 at night. I'm like, oh, we have no post today. I would go home and like figure out a post real quick and get it on, on Instagram.
Yeah.
I did not like doing it. So you would hear from, like traditional people, like we'll get better at that thing. Lean into that, flex into that, learn more, do more, figure out this. No, it's not my strength. So instead of me spending all my time trying to build a skill that I don't want to have anyway, I'm going to hire someone who's good at it to go do it. They love it. They're passionate about it. We try to say, if they're not good at this thing, let's train them into it. Train them, skill building, give them more classes, give them more KPIs, give them a PIP or an IDP. They're just not going to be good at it, period. So why not lean into their strengths? I think you almost set a trap for yourself and for your employees to think that you can train yourself into a thing that you just hate doing. Like, it's not that I don't have the skill. I just don't enjoy doing it. So for me to spend time learning more about it is not helpful because I just don't like doing it. So to do things that I'm already really good at, even better, helps the business far more than me doing things that I hate doing a little bit better because I'm still mad about it. I'm still resentful about it. I'm not passionate about it.
Yeah.
So like this idea that we can lean into our strengths and create jobs that help people really shine in their role and to really do what they want to do and they're passionate about. Obviously, there's things that have to just be done. Like, I get it, follow-ups, phone calls, etc. But to make them sit here and flex on a skill that they don't even like, they don't ever want to do
Right.
ever again, it's just a waste of time for you and for them. And they end up having an empty cup and they're mad about coming to work and they resent being here. And no one wins in that case.
Yeah. And you exhaust everybody at that point.
Yeah.
You're wiped. Then you guys are pissed at each other and it's miserable.
Yep.
Now, pivoting a little bit, kind of leaning into that, slightly leaning into that is accountability and KPIs. So I would say for clinics, I don't know if you have kind of a philosophy on what KPIs businesses should be caring about per maybe role. If it's a provider like an injector, if it's a supporter like an MA, if it is an admin like a front desk, or maybe if it's a practice manager, what KPIs, if you were to hold them each to one or maybe two, what would you do?
I'm going to give a 30-second rationale first. There's this great article when I was in my MBA program. It's called The Folly of Rewarding A and Hoping for B. Whatever KPIs you use need to dictate the behavior that you want to see. If you want them to be a great consultative salesperson, then reward having multiple things in a single visit. If you want to reward them for just being a seller, then you just care about the revenue number. So what is it you're trying to actually reward? What are you trying to actually perpetuate in the practice? You've got to commission, bonus, or KPI that kind of behavior. It's always a behavior, right? The number is like a lagging indicator. It's the behavior that gets me there. Like, for instance, cold calling. If I want to set new appointments, my lagging indicator is like, do we get appointments set? The behavior I want to actually incentivize is how many cold calls are you doing a day? Are you following with your cold calls? Like, what does your cold call behavior look like? Because if I do that well, I'll get the appointment set. So it's like, what are you trying to reward versus what is it you're trying to commission? And they're often in opposition with each other. It's like, if you go to like a retail store, the people who are sharks, like, can I help you? Can I help you? Can I help you? They're working off of commission of just straight sales. What if they had a more consultative approach and said, let's build a whole wardrobe for you? And they're rewarded on having multiple items in the cart. It's a different conversation than it is if I'm just looking at sheer revenue. So I think about things like that with KPI. So for a provider, I want to have rebookings is my number one thing. If a patient will rebook with you, they liked you. They thought you were great. They thought you had a great approach. They had a good service. They had a good result. So for me, rebooking in the practice tells me how everyone in that practice acted that day to get the patient to want to come back again and come back to this practice again. So it's like one of those overall indices for me as a practice owner of like, what are we all doing here?
Which, by the way, on that note, SkyTail just released a study, and they said the average high-performing clinic rebooking rate was 60% for new patients and 85% for existing patients. So if you're hitting 75%-ish up, you're in the clear according to SkyTail.
Yeah, because if you love your lash girl, you always rebook with her. If you love your nail girl, you rebook with her. Like you don't let those things a chance. Like you want to get back in. And I think as a provider as well, I think if you look at the overall metric as like the rebooking, I think revenue per hour for a practitioner is really important. Unless it starts to mean that we are doing the easy sell to get people in and out quickly. I think we have to look at more of the revenue per visit is more of my ideal thing to say when a patient comes in and we maximize the opportunity for the patient in the chair today. That per visit idea is much more holistic for me to say, if every butt in my chair for the given day that I'm there is optimized and maximized to the best of my ability to get them what they need, whether that's a full face correction, whatever the things are that they need. To me, I'd rather have 5 patients today that all spend, $2,000 each than have 25 patients who spend like $200 each. I'm going to be exhausted with the other one, right? So if I'm going to just incentivize revenue per hour, it's like get them in here, churn and burn, churn and burn. There's no time for consultation. There's no time for upselling because I'm churn and burn. If the goal is let's look at per person in the chair, what can we sell? I have time for consultation. I have time to upsell. I've got time to really spend some time and love on them. That's a different behavior than just looking at, turn and burn factory mentality. So it's like, again, what is important to you? Revenue per hour, revenue per patient, per interaction. So I think it's, again, who do you want to be as a practice? Do you want to be high turn, like high volume, low margin, or low volume, high margin? Who do you want to be? And then you have to kind of metric against that mentality.
Yeah, I think that's killer because then your visits can be, you can extend your visits a little bit longer because you're doing so much more volume in that hour. People are way happier. It's optimal outcomes. That's the biggest thing is that if you're optimizing for revenue per hour, you're not always, in fact, you're probably rarely delivering optimal outcomes at the same time.
Well, then you peel the layers back and say, okay, wait, are we doing plans like, full, like long-term plans for the patient where they know what they're going to get each time they come in for the visit? Or are we looking at true like skin goals and, whether it's wellness and peptides and GLP-1 goals? Like, are we really looking at the patient to say, what all does she need or he need? What's their full aesthetic journey look like? And if I focus on that in the consultation, then every visit thereafter, I know in that hour, that patient interaction, I've got to maximize
Mhm.
what I'm doing. So I'm going to plan for that. I'm going to talk about it that way. I'm going to talk about full plans, full treatment plans, not just
Yeah.
like churn and burn. Whereas I'm looking at revenue per hour, it's like, can I fit in 5 Botox in this hour? Maybe, let's do it.
Right.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna have you numb. I'm gonna run over here, run over here. I've got headpieces in, talking to the staff, and the MA is so tired she can't move. She's like sweating, trying to turn all the rooms
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
The practice
Yeah.
can't. The practice can't take that. The capacity for the practice to actually operate when you're looking at revenue per hour is impossible. The front desk is overwhelmed from check in to check out. The MAs are going crazy. If you don't have an MA and you're trying to do that, you're insane. To just
Mhm.
turn the rooms, clean the rooms, get all the stuff out, do the inventory at the end of the day.
Prep
Like,
the next procedure and all that. Yeah. No.
everyone's
Miserable.
exhausted and you've made no money because, again, you've had to see 30 patients today to make what you could have made with maybe 5 or 6 if you did a more
Yeah.
comprehensive plan. So it's like, what kind of practice do you want to build? And then you got to build your metrics to actually inform that
Yeah.
kind of, those kind of behaviors.
So would you then maybe not have individual KPIs per department, but have group KPIs that everybody's going towards? Like rebooking rate, for example. Yes, it's on the provider of like deliver a good, optimal outcome and have a great appointment. It's also on the front desk to do that, or even revenue per visit. Like I would imagine that the MA can also support that, especially if they're numbing and they're having discussions with the person about like what are the procedures they've got going on in the clinic. They can all support that. So would you do group KPIs versus individual KPIs, or would you still have some sub things that they're managing for themselves?
That's the real question, right?
Isn't it the real question?
So I love Lululemon. I'm sure you shop there as well. They all sell as a
Mm-hmm.
team, right? They don't care who helps you. They don't care who puts you in the room. Like, the whole team has a goal to achieve. And so you get great service because they're all working to help you. I love the idea of a group number because then if there's low hanging fruit that we can fix, I'll jump in to help you. You'll jump in to help me. Like, we'll try to help each other to make sure that things are operating effectively. And also, if you're a turd, you don't do your job, people will call you out for it. It doesn't require a
Right.
manager to intervene. You can self-regulate. You are a decentralized organization where you're self-regulating for each other so the overall team can succeed. If you want to function as a real team, you have to have that anyway. I can have individual metrics for me and for you. Like, I want to know how you're doing independently. But if we're delivering to the organization a team number, we're going to self-regulate and we're going to get out the bad seeds or push them in to pressure them into doing better so that we can all make the number. So I love a good group number because then it means the front desk has to work with the MA, work with the manager, the bookkeeper. We have to all work together to achieve the number. We all have a part to play, which is where the like really clear roles comes into play. Like, hey, we're not seeing clean rooms. Is it the MA? No, because Jane can't finish fast enough. Sally's in her room trying to get her to finish, so she can't clean up my room. So really, at the end of the day, the problem is that the first person can't get her visits done on time. So because she's behind schedule, everyone's thrown off. So let's get her more efficient, get her capacity more dialed in. So we start to see the gaps in like the process, SOP kind of thing, the workflow. We know now that, when the front desk can't walk it back to the back office, is it an issue for the front desk? No, there's just no way they could ever do it because we're always behind schedule. If we could get the schedule fixed, we could always now do this thing we have to do each time. So I think it really helps to uncover where the bottlenecks are and the gaps are. If the whole team is looking at the process to say, we failed. Why do we fail? Who failed? What was the problem? But you got to be very candid to say, hey, teammate, we failed because it dropped with you or it dropped with
Yeah.
me. And then being able to have sort of that mindset. It's like the Blue
But-
Angels, right? They do all the chair training before they go out and they actually fly. They know what they're going to do. They know they're left, they're right, they're up there. They all know exactly what to do before they ever go out and start flying. And if one person's off, they're all dead. I feel like it's kind of the same thing. It's like, it's not just one guy dying, right? Individual metrics. It's not just one guy dying. We're all dead if we don't prepare as a team to really conquer whatever those goals are for the day.
Yeah. And it keeps them, it keeps people not so focused on themselves and keeps them focused on the group. We were just talking about the Alan Mulally example of, when people are trying to save their own skin the whole entire time, rather than being concerned about the group, and what we're trying to do as a business. If you're so concerned with saving your own skin and, oh, well, my KPIs were good. It's like, yeah, but the whole company burned down in the process while your KPIs rocked. It's like, who cares? So I love that. And I think I've always thought of individual KPIs with businesses, but if they just have group goals that they shoot towards, it allows them to, as a group, look at what are we trying to accomplish as a unit, as a company, what are we trying to do to make this happen next? And it makes them hold each other accountable, and it takes off the stress of, yes, I dropped the ball. Okay, I want us to win together. It gets rid of the ego of, oh, so-and-so's numbers are down. That's why we're down.
Well, and the other benefit for this, which is a big one in our industry, as you know, is like they're going to leave and take all my patients with them. This makes them loyal to the practice because now if I go on PTO and I'm gone, I'll say, hey, Jared, my patient Jane's coming in. Here's her, you've got her records from an AR, hopefully from your prior visit. I'm going to go ahead and give you a few ideas or thoughts about what I have planned for her so you can see her. She's not waiting on me to come back from PTO. And then if I go to leave the practice, the practice owns the patient, not just me, because she's seen you, she's seen me, she's seen the esthetician, she's seen the laser tech. She doesn't care which injector she sees because we're all good. We're all trained the same way. We're all taking care of her collectively like a healthcare team, which is how it works in a hospital. We're a healthcare team now, not just me as the injector. So I don't have some claim to her, like like some claim where I've imprinted on her and she belongs to only me. It becomes very hard at that point. You talk about capacity. If patients want to only see me ever, and I'm their only person, and it's all about me, we can never grow because I only have so many hours in the day. So we're bottlenecked at my capacity. If the patient's like introduced to all of us and we're all working together collectively to give her a great result or him a great result, it doesn't matter who they go see. We're all kind of in this together and the same idea about, our beauty, our look, our aesthetic, then it doesn't become such a 1-to-1 ratio where if I ever leave, we're all screwed because I'm taking all my patients with me. They now belong again to the overall brand and not just to me collectively as the only person they'll ever deal with here in the practice.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a clinic that I know of. I won't say her name, but I know that she probably wouldn't mind. You might even know her. She does rev share as a group with her. Basically, anytime somebody joins her team, they're part of the rev share for the company. It's a really, really cool model, and it makes people aggressively excited to grow the company down to the front desk. Every employee is getting a rev share. They're getting like a base plus rev of the group, which I think is beautiful and super helpful. So the last one, so let's talk about that for a second. Obviously, everyone's scared of what if I lose them? What if I lose them and they go to some other clinic? Let's talk a little bit about retention of employees. And it's very often, you probably hear the same thing. It's very often that I hear clinics say, nobody wants to work anymore. Oh, they just want to take my business. Oh, they just want to this, and that. What kind of merit do you think that has versus evaluating the culture that individual is creating on their team?
I think there's definitely some real chances where they don't want to work, right? We know that people just don't want to work in some cases.
Been there.
And,
totally.
Weed them out. That's fine. But I think the other part of this is that employee has to feel like they're part of a bigger system or a bigger brand, a bigger initiative, a bigger movement. Like if I don't feel like I'm part of this culture and we're bigger than just the owner whose name is on the door, it's never going to work for me because I'm going to always be like a person who's standing in here, right? I'm replaceable. I don't really matter. I've got to be part of the fabric of that practice to feel like I'm part of that practice. So if I leave, don't be shocked if you've never been part of your actual day-to-day practice operations. I think part of that's like the talent mapping of like, what can I do next? I come in as a provider. What's my next step? Can I do more, take on more? Where do I fit in the overall vision of this practice? And if I'm not there yet, coach me. Tell me how to get there. What am I doing wrong? Being very clear about those roles. I think turnover is often because we get bored or we feel like we're being stifled or we're kind of bottlenecked in our career path. Like if I'm going to be with you forever, then treat me that way, right? If you want me forever, then let's do that. If I'm here temporary in your mind, then I'm here temporary in my mind also. So I think part of that turnover is like we don't commit fully to letting a person really into our orb, into our sphere of like ownership and authority to let them be part of the practice and the decision making process. So I think that's
why do you think that is that they don't let them in? They're afraid that they're going to leave?
Yeah, it's like if I show you my cards, you might leave. Like, yeah, but if you don't, I'm going to for sure leave. Like, I think that's the end of the day. That's kind of that's the bulk of it. If I want to be an entrepreneur and you don't give me the chance to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to go find that opportunity somewhere else. So if you find high achievers, they want to achieve, let them achieve. And if you don't want high achievers, that's fine, but don't expect to grow. So it's like who you attract, who you want to attract is like a me or a you, right? I'm going to get in there and work my butt off for you and deliver for you, but don't be shocked if I want to do that and you don't let me do that anymore, I'm going to go find that somewhere else. So I think you've got to let them grow and be part of the system, part of what you're doing as a decision maker in the practice. And yeah, it's kind of one part of it. The other part is just not knowing where I stand. I think if you want to have a very successful group, they have to know at all times where they stand, what are the goals, where they have gaps, like be very crystal clear about what you expect in the role and don't blindside them, right? If you hire somebody in as a front desk, don't all of a sudden say, oh, actually, you're the MA. I thought you would just know that because we had a need over here. No. I'm doing what I expected to do. My goals, my whole sheet of like what I'm expected to do is this. You changed the rules and didn't tell me. And so now I'm in trouble. So now I resent you. And there's a whole other issue there. I think part of that transition from me saying, I love it here. Now I'm like, I'm over it and I want to leave is like, I feel like I'm not being taken seriously. I'm not being,
I've got whatever this is that you've got right now. I have had that so much recently.
Man.
I don't know what it is.
Killing me. But I feel like if they don't have a clear expectation, clear role, clear guidelines, they get nervous and they get squirrely and they'll end up leaving. So this idea that they're going to leave, yes, and if they do, that's okay. If they came to you, they gave you a year of their life, 2 years of their life, and they're fantastic employees, they helped you to grow and learn things in a certain way, do things
Yeah.
better, and they leave, while that does suck, like, it is part of life, and so to never take the chance and to have mediocre hires forever because 'cause you're scared and you're fearful, just make a better practice where they wanna stay and they're part of your of what you're doing, and if your growth is to open up new locations somewhere else, let them go be that person that goes and, like, seeds that next practice and becomes that, that location manager or leaves the clinic, all the providers in the clinic. Give them a thing to achieve and they'll wanna stay, but if they have no place to
Mhm.
go and nowhere to no ladder to climb, they're going to get restless.
Yeah, and you gotta know what the ladder is. I think we talked about that at the very beginning. You gotta know what that success ladder looks like for the individual, and if you can build, and then they're gonna know that you see them and you care
Mhm.
about them. Like, people, there's a the old quote, people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. And there's a lot of truth to that of I quit the fact that I wasn't seen. I quit the fact that I didn't feel like I mattered here. There's some people who are super money motivated, and their whole mindset is no, no, no. I just need to go make
Mhm.
money. But I think that's 5% of employees. Maybe 10% of employees. I haven't had that. Our retention rate is super high at our company because people like working here. It's great community. They're loved by their bosses and their teammates. It's super low ego. It's easy to be here, and I think we also know what matters to everybody individually. And we're supporting them from an individual basis of how do we make you into the next you,
And
so that
be
you
and be
can do
candid
more.
about that. I think that's the other part of that. To your point is like, I want you to be you, but I've got to be very upfront and have crucial conversations, be candid about it. If I'm like, oh, Jared, you're so great, you're so great, you're so great. And then one day I'm
Yeah,
like, Jared, you're failing miserably. I want to fire you. It's like, but you told me I was
yeah,
great for 6 months. Like, had you told me I was doing this wrong 6 months ago, I would have solved the behavior issue. Like, have some
yeah,
courage. If you're going to be a leader, you've got to have courage. You've got to have the ability to say, I'll put my ego aside and my hurt feelings aside and how awkward this might feel for me to go tell that person that they need to improve a part of their day to day. I owe them that courtesy. They're giving me their life, they're giving me their time. I owe them expectations and then clear coaching and clear guidance so that they don't get blindsided, but also that they know how to get better. You want to do good in your job, right? No one comes in saying, I want to be bad
hmm
at my job. I want to be great at my job, but tell me how to do that if I'm not doing it the right way, because I want to please you. You want to please me. If we do that together,
yeah.
it's a great relationship. So I think just have a lot of courage in that and be okay with saying it's going to feel awkward, but you've got to have the conversations and you've got to coach and develop or it's never going to work.
Now, maybe I said that was my last question a second ago, but I think there's one more conversation, at least one more sub conversation we should have here, which is firing detractors. And I was just talking. I had a meeting with CPP just before this. They're sweet people, and I don't know how we got on this topic. Doesn't matter. But I was like, yeah, I imagine oh no, what I said is I imagine one of the hardest things. They acquire clinics. Imagine one of the hardest things about acquiring clinics is that there are employees that I bet the person you bought it for thinks is an important employee, but you buy it and you're like, this is the biggest detractor that you could possibly have. They are holding the business back. We have to let them go. And she was like, oh my gosh, it is such a balancing act to suggest that we fire this person who's been a staple at their business when really they're hurting the business. It's really tough. I've had that so many times in our business where it is so hard. Firing people that just don't do the job well enough is so hard for me because they're usually really nice people. They'll cry on the call and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for this job, Jared. I understand that you have to let me go." And I'm like, "No, can you like yell at me or something so I feel good about firing you?" That's the hardest thing for me is firing when it's like, hey, you're hurting the company at this point. I want to be your friend, but I can't keep paying you to do this job. And I would imagine you probably have greater insight into this, how often clinics keep people that they absolutely should not.
Every day, because I think firing is, to your point, is really hard, but also you feel like you've invested time in training them. So it's like that idea of I've spent so much money on training Jared, I can't fire him now, or he's been here for
Yeah.
5 years and he does this one or two things that are really important to me that if he goes, he's going to do that stuff. I think that's where you have to, and I say this all the time, or even around here, know how the work is done. Go see how the work gets done. You should know how the jobs in your practice that are critical get done so
Yes.
that you can fire somebody and be okay with it. If you have no idea how a process works and you fire someone and no one else has done either, you are screwed. So go
Yeah.
make sure those key processes are recorded somewhere. It's much easier to say you're gone if I know how to do your job when you leave. And you'll often find out they weren't doing the job that they're doing anyway. They're doing way less work or kind of a different version of work. But I think if you overly invest in this idea that they've been here for a long time or I've spent so much time and money on them, you can't let that get in the way. It's like I'm going to, save $1,000 by spending $100,000. It's like that's
Right.
dumb. If they're not working, you got to cut it off. And I think oftentimes the employee knows that they're not doing the right thing. They feel
They
it too.
do.
They feel
They
like
do.
they're being ostracized, or that there's a weird vibe in the room. It's not really a surprise, and it shouldn't be a surprise, right? If we're doing a monthly coaching conversation, we have a performance review that we're doing periodically. We're looking at like a PIP or an IDP, or these things that help to figure out performance gaps and to try to solve those gaps. It should not be a surprise unless it's in the first 2 weeks of onboarding. But they know that they're not doing the job. But I think you hold on to employees for so long because you're like, oh, if they leave, what will I do? Well, if they stay, what are you going to do? Like keep doing this forever? Hell no.
Right.
You got to get rid of them. Get somebody else in. Split their job in half. Give other people a little bit of a raise to do a few things in their job, and not hire a whole new person, for that role. If you can just split it up into different parts. So I just think that firing has to be done. It's the circle of life, man. You got to fire them. And who you start with today is not who you're going to be with in a year. Like if your first 30 hires are one kind of business, the next 20 are a different kind of business. And it's not going to be the same today as it's going to be in 5 years. If you're going to scale, you got to have better talent. You got to upskill your talent. So they're not going to always survive. If they're with you in the beginning, that's great. But loyalty does not build a business long term. You have to have skills, competencies, the ability to get shit done. And that might look different when you're in year 5 than it did when you're in year 1.
Alex Hermosi says you always have one of 2 different types of debt when you start a business. If you have lots of money, or if you don't have money, you're going to have financial debt when you start the business, or you're going to have talent debt. So you're either going to have financial debt or you're going to have talent debt, where it's like you just can't afford to hire the talent that you need, and eventually you're going to have to either upskill people to the level where they can handle it, or you're going to have to bring people in that are dramatically more talented. I had the worst or the hardest conversation because we had a staple in our company, and this individual just was not accomplishing the job. And I knew it, but God, if this person wasn't the sweetest person ever, and we all loved this person, and they were so good for culture, but they were blowing it at their job, and it was hurting clients. We were churning just specifically because of this person. And at some point, the person scheduled a one-on-one with me and said, Jared, you can fire me. And I was like, don't, I can't. And they were like, no, I think you need to look for a replacement. I am not doing this job well enough. I've tried. I'm just not nailing it, and you need this. And I was very grateful for that conversation, but I needed to buck up as the owner, and have that conversation sooner. It was my fault. So I'm trying to get way better at that. It's something I suck at, honestly, because I just love my people. I just want them to win. I'm like, I believe in you. And it's like, I know, but I believed in for a long time.
But don't let your lack of courage impact everyone else, because your lack of courage in that situation impacts clients. It impacts people who work with
the team.
Everyone.
The team, I can't tell you how my employees, you're so right. And my employees start looking at me like, are you not going to fight for me here? I'm covering over so-and-so's butt here every day. I'm getting chewed out by this client because so-and-so blew it on whatever, and they're looking at me like, you don't really care about us. You just care about protecting your ego. You look like you just want to protect your own, whatever. And I'm like, oh God, you're so right. Much easier to have those conversations when I'm realizing I'm actually hurting my team and hurting our clients. Tough, always tough to make fires.
Self-awareness is so hard as you get older. Having to know your own gaps and your own weaknesses and really develop them is always tough.
Well, okay. So Tiffany, I've just been so grateful that you joined me for this podcast. I think there's so many nuggets. I got a lot out of this personally. I'm going to go scale to the moon after this thing. And I'm so excited. Me and Tiffany are going to be doing an AI workshop. We got Bonnie and Claude over here doing an AI workshop at Aesthetic Next is happening in 2 months, September what, 8th-ish?
10th to the 13th or 14th.
10th through the 13th. It's always the first weekend of September. Is that what it is?
It's the first weekend after Labor Day.
First weekend after Labor Day every year. And it's going to be at a new venue. What's it called?
Yes, the Sheraton Dallas. Much nicer, way less walking. No need for all the sneakers. We've made it much easier for you this year.
Wonderful. And I got a little bird's eye view of the setup of the conference too. Like the vendor setup is super interesting, and how you guys have that is fascinating. So anybody that's listening, I get asked constantly, what is the best show that I can go to? Jared, if I was to go to one conference a year, for aesthetics, where should I go? And unilaterally, I always say, you need to go to Aesthetic Next. It has got so much available to you. It has such a wide spread of vendors. There's thousands of people that attend this thing, both in person and virtually every single year. It's a dynamite show. And it's fun on top of that. Who knew? We can have fun on top of that. Because you guys have a business track, you have a esthetician track again this year, right?
We call it skincare track now. So
Oh,
it's
of
all
course, of
inclusive,
course,
not just estheticians, but yes. And we
of
have
course.
2 clinical tracks, so clinical 1 and clinical 2. And then lots of think tanks, which is like vendor sponsored activities and vendor sponsored training, some keynotes. We've got lots of workshops like ours, also
Mhm.
some like injector focused workshops, whether you're brand new starting out or
Yep.
you're, more advanced. Really, there's something for everyone in the whole practice. We want the whole practice to come. Front desk person can get something out of it. So can the owner, so can the injector. Everyone can get something out of it.
And it's fun. They've got parties that go on. There's a bunch of like, there's a gala that goes on. It's awesome. It is awesome. And if you're watching this, use the code AC100. You'll get $100 off your ticket. I was gonna say 100% off your ticket. You'll get $100 off your ticket at checkout. Use the code AC100. We love Aesthetic Next. You'll see me there. You'll see Tiff there. You'll see tons of incredible KOLs. I've also got a workshop I'm doing with Mary Robb on social media. I've got a couple of panels that I'm leading as well that I'm fired up about. I got a dude panel, got men in aesthetics. That's going to be very fun. So I'm fired up. It's going to be an amazing show. Tiffany, I am so grateful that you took the time out of your busy schedule to do this. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me on. I love this topic. So happy to be here. And I love you dearly. You know that. And congrats on all your success. You've done a bang up job in your aesthetics history as well.
Thanks,
You're awesome,
Tiff.
Jared. Love you dearly.
Thanks to you. Love you more. Thank you guys for watching The Patient Magnet. Make sure that you subscribe. If you disagreed with anything we said today, leave a comment down below. We'd love to fight you. Or if you've got somebody who's struggling with keeping employees, send this over to them passive aggressively. Thank you. We'll talk soon.